What if the most dangerous part of Charles Bukowski's most famous line is not the destruction, but the way it turns destruction into evidence of truth? Find what you love and let it kill you. Whether Bukowski ever wrote that exact sentence in a published work is still disputed. But the uncertainty almost strengthens the quote. It survives because it feels true to Bukowski's world, not factually, spiritually. The line now circulates like a commandment, printed on posters, tattooed onto bodies, repeated by burned-out students, artists, entrepreneurs, addicts, romantics. It has become one of the central myths of modern ambition, and almost everyone interprets it the same way. Live intensely. Reject mediocrity. Avoid the slow death of routine. At first, it sounds liberating, but Bukowski's writing becomes far more unsettling the moment you realize he was not romanticizing obsession from a safe distance. He was documenting what it actually does to people. That changes the sentence completely, because Bukowski's work is filled with people already being killed by what they love. Alcohol, gambling, sex, escape, fantasy, even work itself, especially work. In Post Office and Factotum, employment is not portrayed as meaningful discipline or moral structure. It is mechanical repetition, a machine designed to flatten consciousness. Bukowski's protagonists drift through warehouses, offices, temporary jobs, racetracks, bars. Not because they are searching for purpose, but because they are trying to remain psychologically intact inside systems that reduce them to routine. That is why the famous line feels persuasive. It offers an alternative form of destruction. Better to burn out from passion than decay from boredom. Better obsession than numbness. Better chaos than spiritual suffocation. And this is exactly where the quote becomes dangerous, because it quietly transforms suffering into proof. If your art destroys your relationships, maybe the art matters. If your ambition ruins your health, maybe the ambition is real. If your obsession consumes your life, maybe that consumption becomes evidence that you lived authentically. The quote flatters extremity. Moderation cannot become mythology. Nobody tattoos maintain sustainable boundaries on their body. The sentence survives because it gives emotional meaning to self-erasure. It reframes damage as transcendence. And modern culture was perfectly designed to absorb it. Online, burnout is constantly aestheticized. Exhaustion becomes evidence of seriousness. People publicly perform overwork the way earlier generations performed piety. Sleep deprivation, creative collapse, emotional instability. These things increasingly get interpreted not as warnings, but as signals of commitment. Bukowski's sentence slides seamlessly into that world because it offers moral permission for excess, not balance, not discipline, not even happiness, intensity. But Bukowski himself is far more complicated than the internet version of Bukowski. The online mythology turns him into a prophet of fearless authenticity, a patron saint of reckless passion. His actual writing often reads more like an autopsy. That is the contradiction at the center of this quote. Bukowski's characters do not descend into obsession heroically. They drift into compulsions they can no longer control. Desire in his work is repetitive before it is liberating. Drinking is not cinematic rebellion. It is dependency. Sex is not transcendence. It is often loneliness temporarily disguised as intimacy. Gambling is not freedom. It is ritualized self-destruction. Even writing, the thing Bukowski valued most, is treated less like a noble calling than a biological condition. That idea appears clearly in So You Want to Be a Writer? Bukowski warns against pursuing art unless it emerges from you involuntarily. unless it comes out like a rocket. Most people read that as romantic advice about passion. But the metaphor matters. A rocket does not negotiate with itself. It launches because pressure becomes unbearable. For Bukowski, vocation is not healthy self-expression. It is compulsion, something closer to possession than choice. And suddenly, let it kill you stops sounding metaphorical. The line is not saying, find fulfillment. It is saying, submit completely. That is why the quote keeps attracting people who feel emotionally trapped by modern life. Because it promises escape from deadness. It suggests there is something worse than destruction, emotional anesthesia. And Bukowski understood that fear intimately. His work repeatedly returns to people terrified of becoming spiritually neutral, terrified of routine, predictability, domestication. In his world, ordinary stability can feel almost existentially humiliating. The office worker who slowly stops feeling anything is just as tragic as the alcoholic collapsing in a motel room. Maybe more tragic, because at least the alcoholic still wanted something. This is the real seduction of the quote. Not recklessness, not hedonism, vitality. The line survives because many people secretly fear that a safe life may become an unreal one. But Bukowski's work refuses to let that fantasy remain clean. That is the crucial difference between Bukowski and the culture that adopted him. The internet extracts the ecstasy from his worldview while discarding the wreckage. It wants the aesthetic of self-destruction without the physical consequences. The mythology of intensity without the actual loneliness. But Bukowski never hid the cost. His writing is full of physical decline, emotional exhaustion, failed intimacy, repetition, squalor, and bodies wearing out under their own appetites. The killing is not symbolic in his work. It is cumulative. And this is where the quote becomes genuinely disturbing, because there is truth inside it. To love something deeply enough that it reorganizes your life may actually be necessary for great art, or discovery, or mastery, or intimacy. Most meaningful human achievements probably do require forms of imbalance. Total neutrality rarely creates anything memorable. Bukowski understood that. But he also understood how easily devotion mutates into self-consumption. Once suffering becomes evidence of authenticity, people stop asking whether their obsession is meaningful. They only ask whether it hurts enough. And the moment pain itself acquires moral prestige, destruction becomes difficult to distinguish from purpose. That is the real danger of the line. Not that it encourages people to love intensely, but that it blurs the line between devotion and annihilation, and makes the blur sound beautiful.